Penguin Audio presents Moon River and Me, written and read by Andy Williams. It was one of those sun-baked August days when, even at 10 in the morning, the heat was rising in shimmering waves from the fields of ripening wheat and corn, making the water tank on the nearby hill waver like a desert mirage. The faintest breath of wind stirred the oak tree outside the window of a time-worn, clapboard house perched on the cinder hill above the railroad tracks. A woman, plump, dark-haired, and with a gentle smile, was at work in the kitchen, the air full of the enticing smell of baked bread. She was humming a tune to herself as she rolled out more dough, but she paused every couple of minutes, cocking her ear to listen. Then she heard it, the lonely, distant whistle of a freight train. She dropped the rolling pin she was holding and took off her apron. She dusted the flour from her hands as she hurried out the door and down the hill toward the little station. The train was in sight now, slowing as it approached, and trailing a plume of smoke against the cornflower blue of the sky. The woman walked along the platform and past a tiny station building, the wooden walls plastered with sun-faded notices. She stopped at the side of the track by a timber frame with a projecting iron hook. As the train approached, a railman swung a canvas mail bag on an iron bar out of the mail car behind the engine. He looked up and blew a kiss to the woman. He was a handsome, craggy-faced man in his early 30s, wearing a railman's peaked cap stained by sweat and dust. A cloud of steam billowed around her as the engine rumbled past, and there was a thud as the mail bag caught on the hook and swung there as the train moved on. The woman reached up and unhooked it, struggling a little with the weight as she lowered it to the ground. She stepped back and waited. There was a moment's pause, and then the sack began to wiggle and twist. An arm and then a tousled mop of hair appeared at the top of the sack, and a small boy fought his way out, emerging with the words, "Surprise!" Although we went through this ritual 2 or 3 times a week, my mom always managed a convincing look of surprise as I appeared. We both burst out laughing and turned to wave to my dad, still leaning out of the small rail car and waving his hat as the train chugged on and rounded the bend. The plume of smoke and steam was still visible long after the train was lost to sight. Hand in hand, my mom and I walked back up the cinder hill to the house, surrounded by the golden cornfields that stretched to the distant horizon under those vast Midwestern skies. I was born in that house on the hill on December 3rd, 1927, the youngest of 4 sons of J. Emerson and Florence Williams. I was christened Howard Andrew Williams, but I was always known as Andy, and I had 3 older brothers, Bob, Don, and Dick, and a sister, Janie, born after me. When I was 6, my mom also gave birth to another child, Buddy. My older brothers were contrasting characters. Bob was one of life's eternal pessimists, forever expecting the worst, and even when it didn't happen, he would soon convince himself that calamity had only been postponed, not averted. Don, the next oldest, was the polar opposite, a permanently sunny, optimistic character. No amount of obstacles or setbacks could wipe the smile from his face for long. Dick was the shy and sensitive one, happiest when off in a corner on his own, scribbling in a notebook or trying to compose a tune on the old and battered upright piano. I was shy, too, but hid it behind a veneer of cheek and self-confidence that only those who knew me really well could see through. We lived in Wall Lake in Sac County, Iowa, 50 miles northwest of Des Moines. It was one of those one-stoplight, one-horse Midwestern towns that a motorist would pass through in the blink of an eye and probably not even notice. But if you were looking for a place that epitomized small-town America, Wall Lake would be as good as any. It was a great place to grow up. Everybody in town knew everybody else, and it was like living in a big extended family. Very little disturbed the sleepy calm of Wall Lake. The one thing that could be guaranteed to galvanize everyone into action was when a tornado roared through. They could appear at any time of year, but most came in May and June, usually in the late afternoon when the combination of heat and humidity seemed to trigger them. There was little advance warning. Sometimes the siren...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?